Commerce has existed since the dawn of human civilization, and in some ways before. It's second nature for humans to trade or barter and try to better themselves through commerce. But is bettering oneself the only real end goal of commerce? Consider Partitio Yellow. Partitio is a character from the video game Octopath Traveler 2, a game with a, let us say, unorthodox class selection. Among the classes are more generic fantasy types like warrior and hunter, but also some more unorthodox ones like scholar, apothecary, and merchant. You see, Partitio is a merchant. He doesn't buy or sell in any commodity in particular, he's just good at buying and selling things in general. From very early on, he says that his motivation is to rid the world of the devil they call poverty. This is because, as a young child in the town of Orzrush, his family fell on hard times. And Partitio's dad, who is a merchant as well, was unable to save the town from falling into a ruin, the town that they both had built from scratch. Partitio comes from humble beginnings, and he has an understandable motivation, but he's also much more complicated than you may realize. Partitio travels from his hometown of Orzrush to Clockbank, a more industrially driven town. There, he sees what he's always seen: poverty. Poverty is a running theme throughout Partitio's story. Wherever he goes, he finds people who are downtrodden and don't have enough monetary value to survive. In that respect, Partitio is very uncharacteristically a merchant. After all, merchants are not philanthropists, they are interested with bettering themselves. And I mean, we can't really blame them because everyone has to work for their own bread. But Partitio here looks to do something different. He looks to better other people's lives using his own skills. So Partitio makes a deal with Rock Brilliant, his father's former business partner, for the rights to the newly invented and mass-producible steam engine. The steam engine, Partitio claims, will change life throughout Celestia. But where Rock wants to use the steam engine to gain a monopoly over the trade, Partitio wants to use the steam engine to better the economy throughout the land. So the deal is struck, and Mr. Rock names his price: 80 billion leaves for the rights to the steam engine. No one expects Partitio to come through with a sum so big, least of all Rock. Rock doesn't set the price so high because he knows Partitio will never be able to pay it off, even though that is true. He does it because he could pin a number value on anything. In other words, Rock can put a price on anything. He thinks that anything can be for sale, even that which he's not really willing to sell. So Partitio, in search of 80 billion leaves, which is an impossible sum, sets out to find it. Rock's incredibly high price is symbolic of Partitio's quest to rid the world of poverty, because Partitio, just as much as everyone else, knows that poverty and the poor will always be with us. There will always be those less fortunate and those who would seek to gain advantage of others. As long as these two things exist, and they do so within human nature, there will always be poor people. And Partitio knows this. He's not a fool, but he goes for it anyway. Partitio knowingly attempts the impossible. But does he succeed? Well, how does Partitio succeed? Well, the answer lies in how Partitio views money, mankind, and merchandise. Partitio has a deep love for his fellow man. This is exemplified in a number of things. Whether it's helping a tired inventor with his greatest invention, or just giving some money to a kid on a street, Partitio has a heart of gold. He deeply loves humanity, and that is the reason behind his altruistic yet impossible quest. Secondly is how Partitio views money. Other people in the story view money as a means to power, or as an ends. But Partitio sees money only as a service to humanity. So money only exists to serve humanity. Is it possible that Partitio is seeing some bigger picture, that the whole purpose of trade and commerce and economy is not just to better oneself, but to better everyone? And in turn, Partitio views merchandise as a means to get money. So in other words, merchandise leads to money, money leads to helping people, and helping people is his final goal. So if Partitio can't actually exterminate hunger, or obtain 80 billion leaves, how does he win? Partitio then journeys to Wellgrove in search of a wealthy noble named Alrond, the second largest business tycoon in all of Celestia. Partitio meets Alrond disguised as a commoner, and when he finds out his true identity, he asks for his help. Alrond is the third party here. He's a merchant like Partitio and Rock, but he's different from both. Rock sees money as an ends. Partitio sees money as a means to help people. Alrond, on the other hand, has a completely different problem. You see, the town of Wellgrove is not as prosperous as it once was. Its inhabitants are bored and dreary and overall discouraged. You see, the reason for this is because Elrond's father, long ago, gave copious amounts of money to virtually every citizen in Wellgrove. But instead of using this money to make wise business choices and careful investments, the town of Wellgrove squandered their newfound wealth. The town was left even more gloomy and depressed than before. The point of this little backstory is to say that Elrond's father just threw money at a problem and expected it to get better. But there's something else here. The secret lies within Partitio. We get an answer when Partitio goes to the main square and notices a merchant who is unconvincingly and tiredly hawking his wares. The bland and uninspired way in which the merchant sells his wares notifies Partitio of the true problem here. You see, indiscriminately throwing money at a problem does not necessarily fix it. Money truly is an answer to all things, but there are some things that require the touch of a loving human. The way Elrond's father gave a lot of money to the people of Wellgrove was framed a lot like a business transaction. He pays a large amount of money to the people, and the people in turn become prosperous and happy. What this deal does not realize is the fundamental nature of the real meaning of commerce. So what is this real meaning of commerce? Well, what's the point of commerce anyway? Is the point of commerce just a way to climb up the social ladder? Is it a way to hoard possessions for oneself? The answer, I think, in all society is none of those. Commerce or trade exists so that everyone can have a fair shot at bettering themselves. And if it's supposed to be fair for everyone, it only stands to reason that commerce is put in place for the betterment of all. So Partitio sets about creating what he calls his department store. That might sound strange, but just bear with me. He then contracts quite a few merchants and gets valuable goods from across Celestia. From there, he proceeds to set up his department store, but this has one major difference from all the other soulless business transactions we've come across throughout the story. Behind all of Partitio's actions, there is a deep love for humanity. Partitio knows the true point of commerce. It's to better everyone, and that's exactly what he wants to do. That's what drives him, that's what motivates him. But still, that doesn't quite answer the question. How does Partitio win? While the situation portrayed here is not entirely realistic, it serves as more of an allegory. The point that the story is trying to get across is that through free trade, people will be happier. When you understand the point of commerce, everything becomes happier. But again, how does Partitio win? So Elrond sees the improvement that his father could never make and decides to give Partitio 80 billion leaves. The sum makes quite the dent in Elrond's fortune, although he is by no means ruined. But he says it's worthwhile to see the citizens of Wellgrove so happy again. So Partitio sets out once again to Rock Island, home of the famous Rock Brilliant. With the 80 billion leaf note in hand, he marches to Rock Island and demands that Rock hand over the rights to the steam engine. Rock, true to form, did not expect Partitio to get this much money so quickly, and so retreats, trying to close off the business transaction altogether. But Partitio pursues, and before the boss fight, Rock gives a kind of speech that's very telling about the core of this story. Rock says he'll pound capitalistic sense into Partitio's skull once and for all. Partitio doesn't outright disagree with this because he does not necessarily disagree with Rock. Partitio even admits in his own words that every merchant has his or her right to do whatever they want with their own money, and the same goes for all human beings to ever exist. What you work for is yours, that's fair. You shouldn't be forced to give it away, or you shouldn't be forced to buy anything you don't want to. And Rock is, to tell the truth, very greedy. He doesn't need to give up the steam engine, or anything. He doesn't need to help anyone. He can just hoard it all for himself. The point here is that Partitio realizes the true meaning of commerce. Not only to better yourself, although it is to better yourself, but it is also helping your fellow man out. After the boss fight, Rock explains that he had also come from lowly beginnings. He had started out as a bootblack, but he was hardworking and industrious, and he always got the objects of his desire. But once he did, there were always new ones to catch his eye. So he began a cycle of working and buying and working and buying and working and buying until he no longer cared how he came by the objects of his desire. And that's what makes Rock a really good villain. The archenemy is the villain who the hero could have been. Partitio, without his love for humanity, might easily have become an exploitative monster, not unlike the likes of Rock Brilliant. So the story ends with Partitio hiring Rock and building a new business empire with him and his father and everyone else he's come across, using the money from mass-produced steam engines to build tracks across all of Celestia to help better the world for everyone. But in the end, Partitio does not fulfill his goal of eliminating poverty entirely. Does Partitio lose? Well, look at it this way. How does Partitio win? If we take it as he must eliminate poverty, which is his first goal, then he doesn't win. Partitio loses, and people remain in poverty throughout Celestia. Despite the uplifting tone of the final cutscene, it seems that Partitio's efforts were in vain. But were they? As I said before, Partitio's not a fool. He knows that poverty and the poor will always be with us. But he makes it his goal to rid the world of poverty anyway. Instead, the story ends with one of many hopeful triumphs in the future. But let's look at how Partitio has defeated his opponents in the past. One of the first people Partitio has to struggle with is Thurston, who is one of Rock's assistants. When Partitio defeats Thurston, instead of killing him or imprisoning him, as another warrior might have done, he does a very Partitio thing to do. He offers Thurston a job. Partitio demonstrates his love for humanity at every corner, and how he defeats his enemies is he shows them mercy. He shows them love, he shows them generosity. Partitio does the same with Gif, a gangster who has oppressed the town of Orzrush for a long time. All of this leads up to his confrontation with Rock. He doesn't kill Rock, he doesn't imprison Rock, he doesn't beat up Rock and leave him for dead. No, he offers Rock a deal. Partitio defeats his enemies through generosity, because he understands the true point of commerce. So the question, how does Partitio win, is simple. Partitio gives. As long as Partitio stands to bring a better tomorrow to the downtrodden people of Celestia, he will never lose.